My in-laws mocked my career in front of my wife, but when the promotion hit, what I did next at the family dinner silenced the whole table. I'm 31, and until last month, I thought earning respect from family was about proving yourself through hard work and dedication. I learned the hard way that some people will never respect you no matter what you achieve, but sometimes the best response is showing them exactly what they've been dismissing. My name is Tyler, and this is the story of how my in-laws discovered that the career they'd been mocking for 3 years had just made me their boss. Let me start with how I met my wife, Jessica. We were both graduate students at the state university. She was finishing her master's in education while I was working on my MBA with a focus on nonprofit management. We met at a campus coffee shop where we'd both go to study, and we bonded over late-night conversations about our career goals and shared values about making a positive impact in our community. Jessica came from what you'd call an established family. Her father, Robert, is a successful corporate lawyer who specializes in mergers and acquisitions. Her mother, Patricia, works as a real estate agent for high-end properties. Her older brother, Nathan, is a pharmaceutical sales rep who makes excellent money traveling between medical offices. They're the kind of family that measures success primarily through salary figures and social status. When Jessica first introduced me to her family during our second year of graduate school, the reception was polite but cool. I could tell they were trying to figure out what someone studying nonprofit management could possibly offer their daughter. Robert asked pointed questions about my career prospects and earning potential. Patricia made subtle comments about the importance of financial stability in marriage. Nathan just seemed confused about why anyone would voluntarily choose a lower-paying career path. After graduation, I took a position as program coordinator at Hope Community Services, a local nonprofit that provides support services for families in crisis. The organization runs food pantries, emergency housing assistance, job training programs, and educational support for at-risk youth. It was exactly the kind of work I dreamed of doing, meaningful, community-focused, and directly helping people improve their lives. Jessica got hired as a middle school teacher in the same district where she'd done her student teaching. We were both excited to start our careers and build a life together doing work that mattered to us. We got engaged after dating for 4 years and married the following summer in a ceremony that perfectly reflected our values and priorities. The problems with Jessica's family started almost immediately after we announced our engagement. During family dinners and gatherings, Robert would make comments about how important it was for couples to be realistic about money. He'd mention other young couples he knew who had struggled because they'd prioritized passion over practicality in their career choices. Patricia was more direct in her disapproval. She'd ask questions like whether I planned to stay in nonprofit work forever or if I was considering transitioning to the private sector where I could really build something. She'd mention job openings she'd heard about at corporations where Jessica's teacher friends' husbands worked, always with the implication that I should be pursuing more lucrative opportunities. Nathan was the worst of the three. He'd make jokes about my hobby job and ask when I was going to get serious about providing for his sister. During one particularly uncomfortable dinner, he calculated his quarterly commission earnings out loud and then asked me how that compared to my annual salary. When I didn't answer, he smirked and said something about hoping Jessica wasn't planning on expensive tastes. The most frustrating part was how they'd frame their criticism as concern for Jessica's well-being. They'd talk about wanting her to have the financial security she deserved, the lifestyle she'd grown up with, the opportunities that come with marrying someone who's ambitious about building wealth. They made it sound like choosing meaningful work over maximum income was somehow selfish or irresponsible. Jessica tried to defend me and our choices, but I could see the constant pressure was wearing on her. Her family had a way of making their disappointment felt without ever directly attacking me personally. They'd praise other family members' career achievements in ways that highlighted how different my path was. They'd discuss expensive purchases or luxury vacations in front of us, then apologize for being insensitive about our budget constraints. What they didn't understand was that I wasn't in nonprofit work because I couldn't do anything else. I had chosen this career deliberately after carefully considering my options and values. My MBA had prepared me for corporate positions that would have paid significantly more, but I'd decided that making a difference in people's lives was worth more to me than maximizing my paycheck. Hope Community Services was well respected in our area for its effectiveness and financial stewardship. We served over 2,000 families annually and had consistently strong outcomes in helping people achieve stability and independence. The organization had been growing steadily, expanding programs and increasing our community impact each year. I was proud of the work we did and the lives we changed. Over my first 3 years at Hope, I'd been promoted twice and had taken on increasing responsibilities. I developed new programs, secured major grants, and built partnerships with other organizations that expanded our reach and effectiveness. My supervisors consistently praised my strategic thinking, leadership skills, and ability to manage complex projects across multiple departments. But none of that mattered to Jessica's family. They saw nonprofit work as something people did when they couldn't succeed in the real business world. They assumed that working for a charitable organization meant I lacked ambition, business acumen, or the drive to build wealth. They treated my career choice as a phase I'd eventually outgrow when I became serious about supporting their daughter properly. The situation came to a head during a family dinner last summer when Robert was discussing a major corporate deal he'd just completed. The conversation naturally turned to career achievements, and Nathan started bragging about his latest sales numbers and the new car he'd bought with his bonus money. Patricia looked at me and asked if I had any exciting developments in my career to share. Before I could answer, Nathan jumped in with a comment about how excitement in nonprofit work probably meant finding a $5 bill in the couch cushions. Robert chuckled and added that at least I was consistent in my commitment to modesty. I felt my face flush with anger and embarrassment, but I kept quiet because I didn't want to create drama at a family gathering. Jessica tried to change the subject, but the damage was done. They'd made it clear once again that they viewed my career as a source of family disappointment rather than pride. That night, Jessica and I had our first serious fight about her family's behavior. She was frustrated with their attitude but felt caught between defending me and maintaining peace with her parents and brother. She asked if I'd consider looking into private sector opportunities, not because she wanted me to change careers but because she was tired of the constant tension. I realized then that her family's disrespect wasn't just affecting me, it was undermining my marriage and making Jessica question whether she should be proud of or embarrassed by her husband's work. Their constant undermining was creating doubt and stress that was poisoning our relationship. That's when I decided I needed to do something to change the dynamic permanently. Not by abandoning my values or switching careers to please them, but by showing them exactly what they'd been dismissing all these years. I just needed the right opportunity to demonstrate that their assumptions about nonprofit work and my capabilities were completely wrong. The opportunity I'd been waiting for came in early September when our executive director announced she would be retiring in December. Hope Community Services had grown significantly under her leadership, and the board of directors was looking for someone who could continue that growth while bringing fresh ideas and energy to the organization. The position required an MBA, at least 5 years of relevant experience, and a proven track record of program development and financial management. The salary range was $95,000 to $115,000 annually, plus benefits and performance bonuses that could add another $15,000 to $20,000 per year. More importantly, the role would involve overseeing a $3.2 million annual budget and supervising a staff of 42 employees across 6 different program areas. I knew I was qualified for the position, but I also knew the competition would be fierce. The board would likely consider external candidates with more traditional business backgrounds alongside internal candidates like myself. I need to demonstrate not just my passion for the mission, but my strategic thinking and leadership capabilities. I decided not to tell Jessica's family about the opportunity. I didn't want to give them another chance to undermine my confidence or make dismissive comments about nonprofit leadership positions. Instead, I focused all my energy on preparing the strongest application possible. The application process was rigorous and comprehensive. I had to submit a detailed strategic plan for the organization's next 5 years, including specific goals for program expansion, fundraising growth, and community impact. I developed proposals for 3 new initiatives that would address gaps in our current services while building sustainable revenue streams. I also had to present to the board of directors, answering questions about everything from budget management to staff development to community partnerships. The presentation went better than I'd hoped, and I can see that the board members were impressed with my vision for the organization's future. Meanwhile, Jessica's family continued their pattern of subtle digs about my career. During a family barbecue in October, Robert mentioned that one of his law partners had a son who'd just been promoted to vice president at a marketing firm. He made sure to mention the salary and signing bonus, then looked at me and asked if nonprofit organizations even had advancement opportunities. Nathan chimed in with his usual commentary about the importance of building wealth while you're young. He talked about his investment portfolio and retirement planning, making pointed comments about how people in lower-paying careers needed to be especially careful about financial planning since they'd never have the luxury of high earnings. Patricia was more subtle but equally dismissive. She'd ask Jessica about our vacation plans or home improvement projects, then make sympathetic comments about how expensive everything was getting. She'd mention properties she'd sold to young couples and emphasize how important it was for them to have solid financial foundations before making major purchases. The worst part was watching Jessica become increasingly uncomfortable during these conversations. She'd try to redirect the discussion or defend our choices, but her family's persistence was wearing her down. I could see her starting to question whether we were making the right decisions about our careers and our future. In November, I had my final interview with the board's search committee. They asked detailed questions about my management philosophy, my approach to organizational development, and my ideas for increasing Hope's community impact. The interview lasted 2 hours, and I left feeling confident that I'd presented myself as the strongest candidate for the position. The waiting period was agonizing. The board had told candidates they'd make their decision by the end of November, with the new executive director starting in January. Every day that passed without news made me more anxious about whether I'd convince them I was ready for the responsibility. During this time, Jessica's family announced they were planning a big family dinner for the weekend after Thanksgiving. Robert had been promoted to senior partner at his law firm, and they wanted to celebrate his achievement with the whole family. Patricia spent weeks planning an elaborate meal and inviting extended family members to join the celebration. As the dinner approached, I knew it would be another opportunity for Jessica's family to highlight successful careers while subtly dismissing mine. Robert's promotion was a significant achievement that deserved recognition, but I also knew the evening would include plenty of commentary about the importance of ambition and financial success. The night before the family dinner, I got the call I'd been waiting for. The board chair called to tell me that the search committee had unanimously selected me as Hope Community Services' new executive director. The official announcement would be made to staff and the community the following Monday, but they wanted to give me advance notice so I could begin planning for the transition. The salary offer was $108,000 annually, plus performance bonuses and a comprehensive benefits package that included health insurance, retirement contributions, and 4 weeks of paid vacation. More importantly, I'd be leading an organization that was positioned for significant growth and increased community impact over the next 5 years. I was thrilled about the opportunity and proud that the board had recognized my potential to lead the organization into its next phase of development. But I was also thinking about Jessica's family and their years of dismissive comments about my career choices and earning potential. As I hung up the phone, I realized I had a decision to make about how to handle this news. I could announce my promotion at the family dinner, using Robert's celebration as an opportunity to share my own good news. Or I could wait and let Jessica's family continue their pattern of condescending behavior, knowing that their assumptions about my career were about to be dramatically challenged. I decided that after 3 years of subtle insults and undermining comments, it was time for Jessica's family to learn exactly what they'd been dismissing. But I wanted to do it in a way that would maximum impact and make sure they understood the full scope of their misjudgment. The family dinner was going to be more interesting than anyone expected. The family dinner was held at Robert and Patricia's house, the same dining room where I'd endured 3 years of subtle insults about my career. Jessica and I arrived to find the table set with their finest china and crystal, clearly marking this as a special occasion worthy of their best efforts. Extended family members were there, Patricia's sister and her husband, Robert's brother and his wife, plus Nathan with his latest girlfriend. Everyone was dressed up and excited to celebrate Robert's promotion to senior partner. The atmosphere was festive and filled with the kind of energy that comes from a family gathering around genuine success. Robert was in his element, graciously accepting congratulations and telling stories about the complex deal that had secured his promotion. He talked about the increased responsibilities he'd be taking on and the significant salary increase that came with his new position. It was clear he deserved the recognition and had worked hard to achieve this milestone. The conversation naturally flowed toward career achievements and professional goals. Nathan updated everyone on his sales territory expansion and the new accounts he'd landed. Patricia shared news about a record-breaking month in luxury home sales. Various relatives discussed promotions, business successes, and financial milestones their children had reached. I sat quietly through most of these conversations, offering appropriate congratulations while keeping my own news to myself. Jessica occasionally glanced at me with a questioning look, knowing something was different about my mood but not sure what it was. About halfway through dinner, Robert raised his glass for a toast. He thanked everyone for coming to celebrate with him and talked about how much family support had meant throughout his career. He mentioned the importance of setting high standards and pursuing excellence in whatever field you choose. Then he turned to the younger generation at the table and started offering career advice. He talked about the importance of being strategic about opportunities and making sure you're positioning yourself for growth and advancement. He emphasized that while passion for your work matters, you also need to be realistic about building financial security for your family. Nathan jumped in with his own thoughts about career development. He talked about the importance of being willing to take risks and pursue opportunities that stretch your comfort zone. He mentioned several friends who had made bold career moves that paid off in terms of both personal satisfaction and financial rewards. Finally, Patricia looked directly at me and said she hoped I'd been listening to the career advice being shared around the table. She said it was never too late to reassess your professional path and consider whether you're maximizing your potential. She mentioned that she'd heard about several openings at major corporations that might be good fits for someone with my education and background. The implication was clear. They still viewed my nonprofit career as a temporary phase or settling for less than I could achieve. Even after 3 years of marriage and professional growth, they saw me as someone who needed career counseling rather than someone who had made deliberate and successful choices. Jessica looked uncomfortable and tried to change the subject, but Robert wasn't finished with his mentoring moment. He said that while community service was admirable, there came a time when you had to think about building something substantial for yourself and your family. He talked about the satisfaction of being recognized for your achievements and having the financial resources to provide opportunities for the people you love. I felt the familiar flush of anger and embarrassment, but this time it was mixed with something else, anticipation. They had no idea that their dismissive advice was about to be revealed as completely misguided. Nathan decided to pile on with his own commentary. He said he understood the appeal of feeling like you're helping people, but that you could make a much bigger impact if you built wealth first and then used your resources to support causes you cared about. He suggested that staying in a low-paying career was actually selfish because it limited your ability to contribute to your community in meaningful ways. Patricia nodded approvingly and added that she'd seen too many young couples struggle because they'd prioritized idealism over practical financial planning. She said she just wanted to see Jessica and me have the kind of security and opportunities that come with making smart career choices. The entire table was looking at me expectantly, waiting for me to acknowledge their wisdom and perhaps commit to reconsidering my career path. Jessica looked mortified by her family's behavior, but unsure how to stop the intervention they'd apparently planned. I set down my wine glass and looked around the table at their concerned, condescending faces. Then I smiled and said I actually had some career news to share that might interest them. I announced that I'd been selected as the new executive director of Hope Community Services, effective January 1st. I explained that I'd be overseeing a $3.2 million annual budget and managing a staff of 42 employees across 6 different program areas. The table went quiet as they processed this information. I could see them trying to reconcile their assumptions about nonprofit work with the reality of what I just described. Then I shared the salary details, $108,000 base salary plus performance bonuses that could add another $20,000 annually. I mentioned the comprehensive benefits package and the opportunity to lead an organization that was positioned for significant growth over the next 5 years. But I wasn't finished. I pulled out my phone and showed them the organizational chart that outlined my new responsibilities. I explained that Hope Community Services was one of the largest and most respected nonprofits in our region, serving over 2,000 families annually with a track record of measurable community impact. I described the strategic initiatives I'd be implementing to expand our programs and increase our revenue through diversified funding streams. I talked about the partnerships I'd be developing with corporations, government agencies, and other nonprofits to maximize our effectiveness and reach. The room was completely silent now. Robert's face had gone pale as he realized that the career he'd been dismissing was actually more substantial than he'd understood. Patricia looked confused, like she couldn't quite process that nonprofit leadership could involve this level of responsibility and compensation. Nathan was the first to speak, asking if those salary figures were accurate. When I confirmed they were, he admitted he'd had no idea that nonprofit executive positions could be so well compensated. He seemed genuinely surprised that charitable organizations operated at the scale and complexity I described. Then I delivered the final piece of information that would completely change their understanding of my career and their relationship to it. I explained that Robert's law firm had recently engaged Hope Community Services as a partner in their corporate social responsibility initiatives. His firm was planning to sponsor one of our new programs and provide pro bono legal services for our clients. I'd be working directly with the senior partners, including Robert, to implement these partnerships over the coming year. The implications hit Robert immediately. Not only had he been wrong about my career prospects, but I was now in a position where his firm would be seeking partnership with my organization. The dynamic he'd assumed, successful lawyer giving career advice to struggling nonprofit worker, was about to be reversed. I'd gone from being the family disappointment who needed career guidance to being a peer who would be collaborating with Robert on professional initiatives. More importantly, I'd achieved this through the exact career path they'd been criticizing for 3 years. The silence stretched on as everyone at the table absorbed what I'd shared. Finally, Jessica spoke up with pride in her voice, congratulating me on the promotion and saying how excited she was about the opportunities ahead. But I could see the wheels turning in her family's minds as they realized how wrong they'd been about everything. The aftermath of my announcement was immediate and uncomfortable for everyone except Jessica and me. Robert was the first to recover his composure, offering congratulations that sounded genuine but strained. He asked several questions about the scope of my new responsibilities, and I could see him mentally recalculating everything he thought he knew about nonprofit leadership. Patricia seemed genuinely confused by the salary figures I'd mentioned. She asked if nonprofit organizations really paid executive salaries comparable to corporate positions, and seemed surprised when I explained that major nonprofits compete for top talent just like any other industry. She'd apparently assumed that working for a charitable organization meant accepting below-market compensation regardless of your responsibilities or qualifications. Nathan was perhaps the most affected by the revelation. His entire approach to measuring professional success was based on sales commissions and bonus structures, and he'd never considered that nonprofit leadership could involve significant compensation and complex management responsibilities. He kept asking questions about my budget oversight and staff management duties, clearly trying to understand how this compared to his own career achievements. The most satisfying moment came when Robert asked about Hope Community Services' upcoming partnership with his law firm. I explained that I'd be the primary contact for implementing the corporate social responsibility initiatives his senior partners had approved. We'd be meeting monthly to evaluate program effectiveness and explore additional collaboration opportunities. I could see Robert processing the fact that he'd spent 3 years giving career advice to someone who was about to become his professional partner. The condescending tone he'd used when discussing my career prospects suddenly seemed inappropriate and embarrassing given our new working relationship. Jessica was beaming with pride as she listened to me describe my new position and responsibilities. She'd endured years of her family's subtle criticism of our choices, and now she was seeing them realize how wrong they'd been about my capabilities and career trajectory. She jumped in to add details about my previous accomplishments that her family had never bothered to ask about. As dinner continued, the conversation shifted noticeably. Instead of offering career advice, Robert began asking my opinion about nonprofit sector trends and management strategies. Patricia wanted to know about my plans for organizational growth and community impact. Nathan seemed genuinely curious about how nonprofit leadership compared to corporate management roles. But the real change was in how they treated Jessica. Throughout our marriage, they'd made subtle comments suggesting she'd settled for less than she deserved by marrying someone in a low-paying field. Now they were seeing that she'd actually married someone with significant leadership potential and professional accomplishments they'd failed to recognize. During dessert, Robert pulled me aside for a private conversation. He apologized for his previous comments about my career and admitted he'd made assumptions about nonprofit work without understanding the complexity and scope of major charitable organizations. He said he was looking forward to working together on the corporate partnership initiatives and wanted to discuss additional ways his firm might support our programs. The apology felt genuine, but I could also see that Robert was realizing he needed to repair our relationship for professional as well as personal reasons. He was going to be working with me as a peer, and the dismissive attitude he'd maintained for 3 years was no longer sustainable given our new dynamic. Patricia had a similar conversation with Jessica, expressing surprise about my career advancement and asking why they'd never heard details about my professional achievements before. Jessica pointed out that her family had never shown interest in hearing about my work beyond making jokes about nonprofit salaries and questioning my ambition. Nathan's response was perhaps the most honest. He admitted that he'd never understood why someone would choose lower pay for meaningful work, But seeing the leadership responsibilities and financial compensation of my new position made him reconsider his assumptions about career choices. He said he was impressed by my strategic thinking and organizational skills. Over the following weeks, the change in Jessica's family's behavior was dramatic and consistent. Robert began including me in conversations about business strategy and professional development. Patricia stopped making comments about financial security and started asking about my work with genuine interest. Nathan began treating me as a peer rather than someone who needed career guidance. More importantly, they began treating Jessica with the respect she'd always deserved. They stopped making subtle suggestions that she'd married beneath her potential and started acknowledging that she'd chosen a partner with significant professional accomplishments and leadership capabilities. The corporate partnership between Robert's law firm and Hope Community Services launched successfully in February. Working with Robert as a professional partner rather than a dismissive in-law created a much healthier dynamic for family relationships. He came to understand the complexity and impact of our work, and I gained respect for his business acumen and legal expertise. My first year as executive director exceeded all expectations. We expanded our programs to serve 2,800 families, increased our annual budget to $3.8 million, and established partnerships with 12 new corporate sponsors. The board of directors approved my performance bonus at the maximum level, bringing my total compensation to $127,000 for my first year. But the most satisfying outcome was seeing how the experience changed Jessica's relationship with her family. She no longer felt caught between defending me and maintaining family peace. Her parents and brother began showing genuine interest in our lives and careers rather than offering unwanted advice about our choices. Looking back, I realized that Jessica's family's behavior had been based on ignorance rather than malice. They'd made assumptions about nonprofit work without understanding the industry, and they judged my career choices by narrow financial criteria that didn't account for leadership development, professional growth, or community impact. However, their willingness to make those assumptions and offer unsolicited advice for 3 years without ever bothering to learn about my actual work or achievements revealed something important about their character and values. They've been more interested in being right about their preconceptions than in understanding their daughter's husband or supporting our choices. The promotion didn't just change my career, it changed my entire relationship with Jessica's family by forcing them to confront their assumptions and recognize their mistakes. Sometimes the best response to people who underestimate you isn't to argue or explain, but to simply succeed so thoroughly that their misconceptions become impossible to maintain. That family dinner became a turning point where years of condescension were replaced by genuine respect and partnership. Jessica's family learned that meaningful work and financial success aren't mutually exclusive, and I learned that sometimes patience and persistence pay off in ways you never expected. The silence at that dinner table when I announced my promotion was worth 3 years of enduring their doubts about my choices.